Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vaughan Gerson from FirstNet, and I'm joined by Kevin Boddy, our technical lead for our infrastructure business. And today we're going to spend a bit of time illustrating the Veeam Cloud Connect DR as a service product and how it can assist you in mitigating risk of a significant data center outage. So Kevin, welcome and thank you for joining me.
Hi everyone, and hi Vaughan, thanks for having me. So today we'd like to run through the basics of our Veeam Cloud Connect product, which both provides a backup service as well as a replication disaster as a recovery as a service facilities. I'm just sharing my screen right now, which is actually as a tenant. Okay, so as a client, this would be my backup, my Veeam backup server, where I would configure the necessary jobs to either back up to the cloud or do disaster recovery to the cloud. So just quickly, let's just run through quickly how we would actually get that set up. Okay, so if you sign up for the FirstNet Veeam Cloud Connect service, we would give you we have 3 specific regions that we can back up or replicate to. So the main centers, Durban, Joburg, and Cape Town. We would give you a login for either of those data center locations. Once you have those details from us, you would go into your Veeam backup server, and under your backup infrastructure here, you would come down to service providers and right-click here and say add a service provider. All right, currently I already have one set up here. Let me just clear the properties here quickly. So you would enter in the Cloud Connect server details that FirstNet has provided you. You'd enter in your credentials and you'd hit apply. Okay, and it'll go and provision the service provider account on your Veeam server. All right, so once you've got that configured, if you have replication with us, as well as backup, you will be able to see that those replica resources under your managed servers here. You'll have in this case, it's provisioned as VMware. We support VMware as well as Hyper-V for replica. So you'll be able to come down to your VMware, vSphere, VMware Cloud hosts, and it's provisioned as a hardware plan. So we would provide you the necessary CPU, memory, and disk resources for you to do your replicas. And then to see how much you're consuming of those resources, you could come down to your hardware plan here, click on the properties, and it'll tell you, okay, I've got 100 gig of storage. This is how much is free, and I have a network with internet access available. All right, likewise with your backup repositories, we would come across here and you can actually see I've got a cloud repository. I've actually got a couple, and tells me what the capacity is, how much is free, and what is used. All right. So now to actually use those resources now, it's very simple. So the backup and replication jobs work almost identically to what you have on your existing on-premise backups. So for a backup job, I'm just going to edit one. All right, and just run through the steps quickly here to get it set up to backup to Cloud Connect. All right, so we'd enter our backup job name, select the virtual machines that we're going to do the backup to Cloud Connect for. On the storage tab, now this is where it's obviously slightly different. We would go and select our cloud repository rather than our on-prem backup repositories. Other than that, there's absolutely no difference. It works exactly the same way. So all the rest of the settings are exactly the same. You can enable GFS retention points. You have the advanced options here to configure additional things like when you want to create synthetic full backups, or just run incremental forever. If you want active full backups on specific days, you can configure that exactly like you would do your normal on-prem backups. All right, you can enable.
So Kev, this backup job that you're creating now, this is created on the customer's backup and replication.
This is all created
on-prem, hey?
Yeah.
Okay,
absolutely.
and so the settings around the number of retention, quantity of retention points.
So I've got 7 days. You can do restore points or days, and you can set it to whatever you want. So as long as you have the quota available, so there's storage in your Cloud Connect repository, you can set this to as many days as that capacity will allow.
And obviously, as the customer reaches a high watermark, we'll be notifying them that they're kind of getting to the 80% of their quota, and then what do they just log a ticket with us and we'll increase the quota?
Absolutely, yeah, exactly, yeah. Veeam will also notify you as part of its normal backup run processes if there is a problem with the capacity and it's reaching its limit. I'll also show you the Veeam Service Provider console where you can actually log in and get another view of that and see what resources you have.
Cool.
All right, so let's hop through this quickly. All right, we can set a schedule, same as a normal backup, hit finish and apply, and off we go. All right, so that's our backup job configured. And then when that runs, it's now backing up to the cloud. If you want to see what backups you have in the cloud, so normally you would have under your backups here, you can see this is where you normally back up to your on-prem environment. You now have a cloud environment here, and this is where the backup job is, and this is all sitting in your cloud repository. Okay, in a safe offsite location with FirstNet. All right, so
and by the way, just to clarify for customers that are potentially looking at using the service, all of our storage is within the borders of South Africa. I mean, we don't send anything outside of the borders of SA. Hey, Kev?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's all within South Africa.
Excellent.
All right, let's just run through creating of a replication job. It's fairly similar process to your on-prem replication jobs. Okay, so we would create a job, give it a name. Let's just run through the steps here, add the virtual machines that I'm going to replicate. Now, the destination would be, as I mentioned, the hardware plan. Okay, so the hardware plan is what is created on the Cloud Connect side, on the service provider side. And you can see the storage that this hardware plan will use. Okay, so that's your quota with FirstNet on in the cloud. Okay, you can select to remap the network interfaces. So you can remap the on-prem network interface that the VM is connected to the Cloud Connect network interface that's associated with your hardware plan, where you store your metadata. So this will be a local backup repository. We also have the option to use WAN acceleration. So either direct or enable the WAN acceleration here as well.
But that'll depend on the license of the customer's backup and replication server.
So you need at least Veeam Enterprise licensing. Unfortunately, Veeam Standard doesn't support the WAN acceleration.
Yeah.
I can enable your guest processing and again schedule the job to run as and when you need. I mean, it doesn't have to be daily. You could do it every few hours if you want.
What is the minimum that we would support, Kev?
The minimum is continuously. Okay, so you can set it to periodic and set it to continuously. So the moment the backup job, the replication job finishes, it'll kick off another replication job. So however long that replication job takes to run,
right?
That's obviously becomes your RPO for that replica.
Right. So you could get an RPO
as fast as your WAN link internet
allows
connection.
You.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so these jobs have obviously run before. So once it's actually run the jobs and we've got the replicas in the cloud, they show up under your replicas here, like normal, your on-prem or your cloud replicas. You can see the type here that says cloud. And that's how you know it's obviously in Cloud Connect. All right, so we can, from here, so let me just give you a demo of what this can actually do. So let's actually fail one of our servers. Let me just bring up our VMware environment here. Okay, so this is my VMware environment. I've got my 3 servers here. I've got a domain controller, an app server, and a SQL server. Okay. If I go back to my RDP connection here, I'm logged into my domain controllers, my DC01 server, and I've got a connection to my app server. Okay, so those are both running. All right. So now, if I just go open a PowerShell window quickly, and let's just kick off a ping to that other server. So I'm just going to ping FNet app01. All right, you can see my ping time's less than a millisecond, obviously because it's locally connected. My server is working fine. Okay, let's actually say we had an issue with the server. and it crashed and blue screen, and there's from a Windows update or something happened to it, application became corrupt. Okay, and the server is no longer functioning. So let's actually just shut this OS down to simulate a failure. And this is where our DR as a service really comes into play.
So you're simulating a partial failure.
I'm simulating a failure of a server. Okay, right. You can see I've got a request timeout. My server is now powered off. Okay, so what I can do now, I need to get the server up and running as quickly as possible. I will hop back onto my Veeam server. I have my replica that's sitting in the cloud. And what I can do now is I can say, fail this over now. Okay. And what that's going to do, it's actually going to start this server up in Cloud Connect and allow us to continue operating. All right. So I can specify the point that I want to restore this VM to. Okay. All right. I've got a couple of points today. I'm just going to use the latest point, the last time the replica ran. Okay. It's going to validate the items, give it a reason, and just hit finish. All right. Now, what that's going to do, it's going to kick off a number of tasks. It's going to start the Veeam network extension appliance on both the service provider side, so that'd be the FirstNet side, and as well as my side. Now, the Veeam network extension appliance basically starts up two very small appliances in your environment and forms a layer 2 VPN tunnel between your on-prem network and the FirstNet Cloud Connect disaster recovery site.
And that only happens at the time of you clicking fail over, hey?
Yeah, correct. So as I need to fail over VM, it's going to start those processes, start those servers up, and get that tunnel up and running. It's going to take a minute or so to get those up and running. All right. So I'm just going to show you what it actually looks like from the FirstNet side point of view. All right. So this would be what FirstNet would see on their side. All right, so you've got a resource pool with all your replicated VMs. This is the network extension appliance it's going to start up. It's going to start up a similar one in your environment. You can see here it's already started my my APO1 replica server. As you can see, it's even running there. Okay, you can see that this is the process happening here. So it's started up the server side. It's getting the rest of the processes. Says the VPN tunnel is established, and shortly the entire process will be up and running.
So what you're saying to me is that ping that we had running earlier on should theoretically then come live.
Oh, there you go. All right, you can see it was timed out because the server was down, and now it's pinging across
and of course,
network. And
yes, so that's why it's 28 milliseconds, because we're simulating it down to Cape Town. Eh?
Yeah, this demo is sitting in Durban, and the DR side is sitting in Cape Town. All right,
brilliant.
So get an increase in latency, but your server's up and running. You can carry on working as normal.
So we've effectively simulated a partial failure, catastrophic failure of a customer's virtual machine or machines, and recovered them within a couple of minutes, 5 minutes, in fact.
Yeah, absolutely.
So brilliant.
I mean, you can look at the time. It's just under a minute.
Yeah.
To start everything, and you can do multiple machines and start them up if you have multiple that have an issue. Get it.
Okay, so I suppose the big question, Kev, is what happens if I have a complete data center failure? In other words, I lose a storage array or multiple host failure, and effectively I need to run my entire environment in the FirstNet infrastructure. How would I achieve that? I mean, I've lost my backup.
I'll show you that. I'll demonstrate that to you just now. So let's just quickly just finish this part of the demo off. So obviously, once I've got this is up and running, I've been working on it. I've got data on it. I might have fixed the issue in my production environment now. I've got a couple of options when it comes to actually failing this VM back now, because obviously I don't want to keep running it in the DR unless it's absolutely necessary and my physical environment is no longer available. So what I can do, if I'm not worried about the data, if it's just an application server that doesn't have any data that changes, I can just undo the failover, okay, in which case it just shuts the VM down. You lose any data that's sitting on the machine that's in the DR site, and you can then start up your server on-prem and carry on as normal.
So it would be good for testing Basically testing your
or if
DR.
it's just a web application server that doesn't, and all the data is actually stored on your SQL server. So the data is on your SQL. The app is just a web front end that has no changing data on it.
Okay.
You could just do an undo failover. It's the fastest way to get it back.
Okay.
You also have the option to copy any changes. So if any data is written to that server now, say customers have been accessing it, uploading documents, using file shares on it or what have you, you have the option to say fail back to production. All right. What that'll do is it'll kick off a replication, but in reverse. So you're now replicating from your DR site back to your on-prem, any changes that have been made, and then you can schedule the cutover. So Veeam has a very intelligent way of doing that where you can actually schedule it. Okay, well, I want to schedule it at 10 p.m. at night. It'll do all the replication, shut the VM down, do the last bit of replication, and then switch over. So your production is now up to date, fully up to date, and functioning on your on-prem site. So those are just a couple of options we have. Now, as you were mentioned, I'm just going to run the undo here because obviously we don't need this. It's just a demo, so we don't need any data that's stored on that server. And it'll kick off and just shut this down. Now, what you were mentioning before is, say your entire site goes down. Okay, so in this case, we would need to create in advance what's called a failover plan. All right, so what you saw when I actually right-clicked on here is you can actually have the option to add this to a failover plan. So you can add multiple VMs to a failover plan. And your failover plans are then listed under this failover plans option. Okay, so I've already pre-created one here. So let's just edit that and see what settings we have here. Okay, all right, so we would give the failover plan a name. We then specify what VMs we want to add to this failover plan. And you can have multiple failover plans with different combinations of VMs if you want, or you could just put them all in one failover.
So give me an example of why a customer would want multiple failover plans.
Just if you've got different applications that have, maybe they're running, different combinations of servers that have to be started together.
Okay.
That's the use case for that.
So typically, like if we want domain controllers and auth to come up first, potentially then our databases and then our app server. It's kind of in the sequence that you've got there.
Yeah. So in each failover plan, you can define obviously what VMs you want to start, but then you can also define the delay between them and the order. So I can move this domain controller up or down within the stack. Obviously, you want to keep your domain controllers at the top because you want them to start first. And then we could set a delay of 60 seconds. So after the domain controller starts, 60 seconds later, our SQL, then 60 seconds later, our application server. So you can control the order that these virtual machines come up to make sure they reach a stable environment when they actually start in DR. Okay. All right, so we click next. This gateway is part of the virtual machine networking. So normally Veeam will automatically pick up the gateway. So the gateway IP is assigned to this network extension appliance so that when these servers actually start in DR, they have a way to get onto the internet. And also it allows them to connect back via the VPN to your on-prem as well. All right, so you don't have to really worry about that. Veeam does most of the time pick this up from VMware. All right. What we can also do is, as part of your plan, we will assign you some public IP addresses. It's not something you have to enable, but you can use the option. Is you can actually go and assign a public IP. All right. There's a IP that will be assigned to you by FirstNet. You can then say, I want to NAT in on this public IP. So for instance, I need RDP access to my domain controller, or I need port 80 access to my app server. I can go and add NAT rules within my failover plan. So when these servers start up, if I try access the server on this public IP, it'll NAT it into that private IP on these ports. Okay, so in this case, I've enabled RDP access to my domain controller when it's sitting in DR. But you could do the same thing for
you can have multiple NAT rules for different.
Yeah, absolutely. You can add as many as you require on here. All right. Okay, and then we just get the summary and click finish, and off it goes. That's our failover plan created. All right. So now our undo of our partial failover has happened, so it's all back to stable environment here. Now, what we have when we have this cloud failover plans, you can obviously start this failover plan, in which case it'll go and fire all those servers up in DR. and then you'll be able to connect to it. So I'll test that just now. But you also have the option to run a test on this failover plan. All right, so when you run a test, it's going to start all the servers. Now, these are all in an isolated environment. They're sitting in DR. There's no VPN between them. So they're separate from your production network. So there's no risk to your production servers experience any kind of corrupt data or anything like that. So when you run the test, it's going to start up the servers. I'm just going to show you the stats from when I ran this earlier. It's going to start the servers in the order defined. It's going to wait until the VM stabilizes. Okay, so in this case, it's going to wait for VMware Gear the tools to show that the server is actually booted. It'll then run an actual ping test to the server to make sure that the server is responding to a ping request. And then it'll power off the VM. Okay, and it'll do that in sequence for each of these VMs, boot them up, wait till they're stable, run a ping test, make sure they're all working, and then power off the VM. So it's a great way of testing that your servers can actually start in DR when you actually need them to.
And does the customer get a report that the test was successful?
There's no actual report. I mean, the stats of the actual run would have to be what you'd bundle into a report if you needed to. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Okay. All right. So the success of running a test, as you can see, it says testing value, and you would have to bundle into a report of some sort. Yeah. Okay. All right. So if I want to actually run this, okay, so I'd click start. I can click start to. Now, start to allows me to say I don't want to use the latest replication point. I can say maybe use one that was 2 hours ago or yesterday's. I can go say start to and select the older time period. If I just want to start the latest replication point, I would hit start. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to hit start. And what it's going to do, it's going to fire up all 3 of those VMs in the sequence that you stated and get them up and running in DR. Now, when you do a failover plan, it's not going to start the network extension appliance. So there's no layer 2 VPN connectivity when doing a failover plan, because in a failover plan, you're considering that your on-prem environment is no longer feasible or usable at that point. So you're switching the entire production over to the failover.
Yeah, so how would they actually, I mean, you're using backup and replication server here, so you're assuming that that's still available. I mean, if the customer had no access.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
so how would
this Veeam server might not be here at all.
Yeah.
And what's great with Veeam is any of these failover plans that you actually create are actually replicated to the FirstNet Cloud Connect servers and are available. So let me just show you quickly from... This is what's called the Veeam Service Provider Console, and you get access to this as part of your Cloud Connect tenant subscription. So when you log into the Veeam Cloud Connect, the Veeam Service Provider Console, you're presented with a summary dashboard. Okay, from here you can see what Cloud Connect backup quota you're using. So in this case, I've got 82 gig left of my 100 gig. I'm using 3 virtual machines that I'm backing up to this cloud repository. My replication quota, this is how many VMs I'm replicating, CPU usage, and also it shows me my disk usage. But what's also great here is I have, if you look on the left here, I've got a failover plan. All right. And what you can see here, this is the same failover plan that I had created previously. And from here, I can click on start and actually start up that failover plan, get my servers up and running.
Okay.
And this is how, if your Veeam server is completely gone, you can log into the Veeam Service Provider Console and start that failover plan directly from here.
Okay, so just to summarize so I'm clear in my mind, we give the customer credentials to log in to this vac.firstnet.co.za, and in the event of there being a catastrophic failure on site, they would log in here and they would actually invoke DR in effect.
Yep, absolutely, yeah.
And that would then start their entire environment on our infrastructure as a service.
Yep, absolutely, yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, got it.
And I can see those are the 3 VMs I'm going to be starting here. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So my failover plan is executed. It's a success. If I actually look at, obviously you're not going to see this, but on FirstNet's perspective, you're going to see that my replica VMs have all started up here. Now, as mentioned previously, I had a public IP address on here. Let's just have a look at what that was. And I'll be able to RDP. So this is my public IPs. Okay, so I've got 81.20.78.51. Okay. And I've actually got this configured here. So if I use my RDP client, okay, I'm going to be connecting directly to that public IP. Okay.
Using the net that you set
Using
up
the
earlier.
public IP, using the net. So now this is all running in DR. It's running through the Veeam Network Extension Appliance, which does all the firewalling and what have you. And I'm now on the DR server running in the FirstNet cloud.
Kev, the one question I have, which I'm sure is on a few customers' minds, is in the event that we've got a total catastrophe in our own data center, I might want to not use NAT. I might want to, send my users home and ask them to VPN in to the environment. So, assuming the customer has now invoked DR using one of those failover plans, how would we facilitate a customer giving all of their users access to the environment, the DR environment now running in the FirstNet infrastructure, if they were all, working from home as an example?
Yeah, so good question. Yeah. For that kind of instance, the Veeam Network Extension Appliance itself can't do personal point-to-site VPNs that your users would require. And in that instance, we would use our FortiGate VDOM appliances to actually provision you a dedicated firewall appliance using our FortiGate infrastructure at each of the data centers. And from there, you can actually configure using the Forti SSL client VPN access for your users to connect into the DR environment. It also provides a bit more in terms of firewalling, IPS, and those kind of options that you can enable to give you a more granular control over what your users are doing and your user access to your service.
Okay, so
yes, we can do that.
We're taking a bit of cloud security from Ben Munn's stable of products, including them into your infrastructure stack, and building out basically a VPN endpoint that sits at the perimeter of the customer's DR environment and allows them to use an SSL based VPN client on their machines and gain access to the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. Correct. Okay. So we've pretty much thought of everything then. I mean, it's a well-oiled machine.
We've got backups to the cloud. So if you need offsite backup, we can do that using the Veeam Cloud Connect backup. DR as a service, either partial failover for single or a few VMs at a time, or complete production site outage where you need to start up the entire environment in DR. We can do that absolutely via failover plans.
Fantastic. Well, is there anything else, Kev, that we need to cover, or is that have we done everything?
That's pretty much it. That's everything to do with DR as a service on FirstNet using Veeam Cloud Connect.
Well, thank you very much for that, Kev. It was very intuitive, and I'm certain that customers enjoyed understanding how it all works. So thank you, and well done.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for having me, Vaughn.
Cheers, Kev.